I'm Gary Mueller, and I'm pastor at First United Methodist Church, Plano.
Prior to General Conference,
I had been working with folks from across the country because of a concern about what would happen to people of color and women and those who are older if security of appointment went away. And crafted an amendment, talked about it openly with our annual conference ahead of time. In fact, there was a piece published in our conference edition of the Reporter about it. When we got into the Committee on Ministry and Higher Education, where the security of appointment was being discussed, it came from a subcommittee on the consent calendar. And I pulled it from that, and we talked about it and began to talk about it. And I offered what is now being referred to as the Mueller Amendment. It is not in the original form it was at the time. A lot of people tweaked it and helped to improve it. And that suddenly went out on the Twitterverse. Everyone knew about it because of a story that Mike Bachman published. And I think what happened was that amendment addressed some of the real concerns about those who speak out for justice and a prophetic ministry, about those who are concerned that are on the edges of maybe the theological spectrum and would be marginalized, about women, older folks, people of color, that there is accountability, there is dialogue, there is reporting. I think to a great extent that's why it went through our committee in favor 68-7, was placed on the consent calendar. I have to tell you, I was shocked when it was not taken off the consent calendar. I had hoped it would be, because I do think it's an important enough issue for us to talk about on the floor of conference. What has happened this morning was 20 signatures were garnered to take it off the consent calendar. One of those was deemed invalid, so it went on to the consent calendar. A delegate from New England asked to reconsider that particular item, proposed a motion to pull it from the consent calendar, and after robust debate about that, by a 60-40 margin, the General Conference just voted to leave it with the action we had taken, which was to improve it on the consent calendar. I have to say I am a bit disappointed, more than a bit disappointed, that the whole conference could not talk about it. I do think, however, on this particular item, there was a great deal of awareness and understanding of what was going on because of all the talk about it on Facebook and on Twitter and through social media. So the amendment that I offered, and is now a part of that issue around security of appointments, had to do with providing protection, providing data, including all of that in conversations with the bishop on an annual basis.
So, Gary, are you saying bottom line right now there is no protection for women and persons of color?
No, I believe what the amendment does is to put together a team to advise the bishop and cabinet each year on the process for making missional appointments, to raise questions about women, people of color, and older folks, so that those folks are not being left on the edges because it's easier to appoint certain people certain places. And then the amendment includes the provision that the bishop and cabinet will report to the executive committee of the Board of Ministry annually statistics about who is not receiving an appointment. And additionally, that information will be passed on to Episcopal committees on the episcopacy at the annual conference and jurisdictional level for part of bishops' evaluation. So the kind of stuff that's built in is looking at data and transparency and lots of conversation to see if there's a trend developing of certain folks not receiving appointments. And if that's the case, that then becomes a major issue for discussion and action. The question about how this impacts our conference is that there will be a team put together of 8 people, half laity, half clergy, including the dean of the cabinet. And that group will meet on an annual basis with our bishop outside of any particular appointment making to talk about issues and concerns and trends around missional appointments with particular impact upon people of color and women and those who are getting older. I think it will impact our conference as that begins good conversation and transparency about what's going on in the missional appointment process, so we can really see the impact that doing away with security of appointments has. I think it will be great conversation. I think it will be good information for our conference, and we will be a healthier conference as a result of it.
Thank you.
Does that do?